fanatics. As promised, it's your guy, Soup here at SSN. Excited to feed you the nectar from our juicy Week 16 matchups as we wrap up the semifinals of this year's league's playoff. As we mentioned earlier today, this weekend didn't disappoint. There were two big upsets coming out of this searing hot weekend. I don't think the world of football or any of the fans were ready for this championship matchup coming up in Week 17. But before we get into that, let's break down the matchups from Week 16 from the winner's bracket. Starting off for the winner's bracket, we had ourselves a showdown of the Patchwork Kings. These two teams, Uncle Rico and Team H. Lundeen 16, have been merchants of the waiver wire all season, constantly picking up the next up-and-comer or an established free agent who is already a stud. These managers have worked it hard. Uncle Rico had an exceptional year and managed to bump, skip, and jump his way into the third seed, heading into the playoffs, followed by a well-rounded victory over the venerable False Sharks in Week 15. On the flip side, you had a struggling week-to-week floater in Team H. Lundeen 16, a team who at first seemed to struggle and didn't have much of a postseason outlook or any type of chance. Slowly became a powerhouse in the latter half of the season, barely sneaking into the playoffs of the 7th seed and making the most of that opportunity with a upset over the number 2 seed Drake May Simp last week. Well, without further ado, let's check out their matchup. First, let's go over some notable players for our friend Uncle Rico. Some notable players for those guys were Trevor Lawrence, or as our friend Rico likes to call him, Sweet Prince. He had another stellar career performance with his 31-point contribution, throwing for 3 touchdowns and rushing for another. Another key player on Uncle Rico's roster this week, Jahmyr Gibbs, a.k.a. the Workhorse. He was good for 17 points, almost 18. He got 10 receptions on 13 targets for 66 yards and a tutty. Another notable player for Uncle Rico was Will Lutz. He had a decent contribution with 10 points to the team as a kicker, going 2 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 in extra points. Uncle Rico struggled with management this weekend, allowing a whopping 51 points to sit on his bench. Although you can't control these things in fantasy, I'm sure Uncle Rico was hurting watching the career performance of DJ Moore and Ramondre Stevenson in their respective matchups. Some notable players for Team H. Lundeen 16 were Tyler Shuck, or as H. Lundeen likes to call him, Lord and Savior, put up a 17er for the team with 32 completions on 49 attempts for 308 passing yards and a tutty. Omarion Hampton, or as H. Lundeen likes to call him, Zaddy, contributed a solid 16 points with 16 carries for 85 yards and a touchy. Bijan Robinson was another one of note with a 26 bomb for 76 rushing yards and a tutty, as well as 92 receiving yards and a receiving tutty. This guy can run. This guy can catch. Finally, we got Brock the Cock, also known as Brock Purdy, who shined with 31 points to the team, throwing for 295 yards on 25 completions out of 34 attempts and 5 touchdowns. Not much room for improvement there for H. Lundeen. His guys came out on fire and they did their job, only leaving about 34 points on the bench with no notable points attached to one player on the bench other than Quentin Johnson. This manager was on point with the choices he made this week. With both managers being legends of the league, this game delivered an entertainment and aura. Ultimately, Team H. Lundeen 16 came out on top with this playoff win with a 120-92 victory over Uncle Rico. Next up on the list is this week's SSN matchup of the week. Two teams went at it in this arena. Team Drew 1793 and Urban Scissors, both impressive teams with all-stars on their rosters. Team Drew has consistently been dominant all season. Only getting 2 losses in the regular season, this team was a shoo-in to the postseason. Very impressive draft from the manager of the team And great free agent acquisitions gave them the ability to essentially coast week to week into victories. Other teams in the league noted that Team Drew 1793 was so good they had essentially two full teams in one. He was able to clinch the first seed in the playoffs and earn himself a bye in the first round. On the other side of the ball, you have Irvin Scissors, a team that many have deemed fraudulent and has struggled with their playoff position legitimacy being questioned because of strength of schedule as well as the drop gate that followed his week one nail-biter victory over Team Sissipoo. However, after the league held an emergency conference and polling, the Dropgate event was legitimized, ending the debate with a landslide victory in favor of the occurrence. GM Soup of Irvin Scissors was relieved with the outcome of the poll and continued with business as usual. His team looked good coming out of the first round of the playoffs and bolstered their roster with a solid acquisition in Jalen Hurts via the waivers. Also, notable pickups from that same claim class were D. Swift of the Bears to Irvin Scissors, M. Wilson of the Cardinals to Drew 1793, and Q. Judkins of the Browns to Uncle Rico. The matchup went down in the last second with Monday Night Football mattering for points right up until the Colts turnover on downs in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. Some notable players for the matchup on Team Drew 1793 were Jonathan Taylor of the Colts with 16 carries for 46 yards and a tutty, as well as 3 receptions on 3 targets for 33 yards, contributing a solid 15 points to the team, although it may have been too little and too late for this matchup. Another notable player for Team Drew was Kirk Cousins of the Falcons, put up a solid 18 points with 21 out of 35, 197 yards and 2 touchdowns, plus a rushing touchdown. Finally, on Drew's roster, a notable player was actually many. It was the Texans' defense, giving them a solid 12-point contribution, allowing only for 21 points in their matchup, getting a touchdown, 3 sacks, an interception, and a forced fumble. Leaving 48 points on the bench with a solid performance from his bench warmer Cortland Sutton, and injuries catching him off guard, I'm sure that stung a little bit for the manager Drew there for Team Drew 1793. Some notable players for Irvin Scissors were Justin Swag Daddy Herbert, getting the team a solid 30 points, going 23 for 29 with 300 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing tutty as well. Another notable player on Irvin Scissors' roster was Jalen Hurts, helped out GM Soup there in the Superflex position, getting a neat 19 points on 22 out of 30 attempts and 185 yards plus 2 touches. Also a career game coming out of NOLA. Our friend John Johnson getting a twisty 12 points, pulling down 8 catches on 9 targets for 89 yards. Soup left about 40 points on the bench in his victory matchup. The final of this clash was in favor of GM Soup of Irvin Scissors, scoring 109 points to Drew's 104. Important to note that Team Drew 1793 was plagued with injuries this week and allowed some points to rot on his bench, ultimately leading to Irvin Scissors' League Watch upset, taking out the number 1 seed in a result nobody saw coming. With Week 16 wrapping up and the championship on the horizon, I think it's safe to say we are all super excited for this upcoming press week and the showdown between Irvin Scissors and Team H. Lundeen 16. As always, thank you. Stay classy. And this is Soup from SSN signing off.